So this is the fourth part of the Buddha Dharma Series, and in this part I'm going to talk about aspects 3, 4 and 5 of the eightfold path. So they are communication, bodily actions and livelihood. But before I talk about that, I want to just talk a little bit about the brain so you understand how the brain is working. And then you'll see the importance of doing these 3 parts of the path wisely and skillfully. So in our brains we have billions of neurons, and these billions of neurons are firing messages to other neurons. So when you do an action, it makes a path for the neuron. The neurons like to take the easiest path. That's what they do. So if you do something 3, 4, 5 times, it becomes a habit. It becomes a pattern of behavior, which means that this is the path that the neurons will be firing because it's the easiest path. You've made that path. So when that happens, then now you're working for your unconscious mind. You're not having to think. You just act like you're sleepwalking. You're just actually doing this without giving it any conscious thought, which is great if they're good habits, good patterns of behavior, but not so good if they're not good habits or patterns of behavior. Now we can change the path. We can change our behavior. So this was the path that was the easiest path, but now I'm going to change my behavior. So I'm going to make a new path, but it takes a lot of effort. I'm sure all of us have had habits in the past that we want to break, and we've really tried hard not to eat so much chocolate, not to drink so much red wine, and all these things that would become a habit for us, and now we want to change that habit. So we have to make a new path for the neurons, but it takes time because they keep wanting to fire down the other path that's easier for them. So we have to then make conscious decisions that no, I don't want to be acting this way. No, I want to be acting this way. But we can only do that when we're being mindful and when we have conscious decisions. We've made our intentions that we're doing this. A good example of this is that when you're walking through a forest and there's a path, so it's easy for us to go down that path. So this is the path the neurons like to take. But if we want to now take another path, then we have to break and put in effort and try to get through the forest and make a new path. That's exactly what we're doing in our minds. The normal path we walk through the forest is the path the neurons like to take. When we're starting a new path, it's like cutting through that forest just to make a new path. But after a time, that path will become your main path, and the other path, the other old path, will become overgrown. So why I'm talking about this is because we're going to be talking about our communication and our bodily actions and our livelihood. So if we've got ourselves into unskillful habits, we can change those unskillful habits. So let's look at skillful communication. So if you lie, if you use diversive speech, if you use harsh words, or if you just spend all day idly gossiping, that is going to be the path that the neurons fire down. The more that you tell lies, the more that you become that liar. The first time maybe it's difficult and you feel worried about telling a lie, and then the second and third time, but once it becomes a pattern of behavior, then we naturally become that liar without even having to try hard. We become that liar because that's the path that we've been sending our neurons down. And the same with harsh speech. Maybe you say a harsh word once or twice, But if you keep using that harsh language, if you keep saying this harsh word over and over again, keep repeating it to people, that becomes the path. That word will come out before your conscious mind even kicks in, because you've made that path. It's the same that if you spend all day idly talking. So it's okay to spend a little time having a chat with your friends, sitting having a cup of tea or a coffee and having a chat about what's going on. But a lot of the time this idle talk turns into a little bit more bitter, talking about people and, you know, talking bad things about why they look like, and look at the way they act and look at the way they dress and they did this and they did that. Once you keep doing that, then that is going to be the path that you go down. You're going to be that gossipy type of person. People are not going to trust you, like you, and build a relationship with you if you lie, if you're always using harsh words, if you just spend your time backstabbing and gossiping about people. So if that is the way that you're spending your life now, you need to be making a new path through your forest where your words are helpful, your words are skillful, your words are kind. You know, if you're going to say something, you should first check, is this going to help somebody? If it is, then great. If it isn't, don't do it. Is it, you know, a word that is going to bring people together? Is it a compassionate thing to say? If it is, wonderful. If it isn't, then don't. Because the more that you do this negative talking, the more you do the backstabbing and harsh words and lying, the more that becomes your pattern of behavior. And then it becomes really difficult for us to try to break that pattern. And while we're talking about skillful communication, let me just add about social media. I don't know why it is, but all of a sudden, because of social media, we all now have an opinion about everything. Everything. Even before, you could have read something and okay, I don't have an opinion really. It's not my field of expertise, don't really understand it. So you just leave it. But not now. People put things on Twitter. People have to respond, even though they know nothing about it. And not only are they responding, some of them are so abusive. I mean, they are just cruel. If somebody is a singer, if somebody is an actor, or if somebody's like me, like a teacher, and we're out there on social media, it doesn't mean that we put ourselves out there to get abuse. I know recently I've had a lot of abuse from things I've posted from Christians that are attacking me. But, you know, it's okay to put your viewpoint. I don't mind. I quite like that. If somebody says, oh, this is my viewpoint, this is from my religion, this is how we see it, then I like that, because then I can think about that. But when you attack me, what is the point of using bad language against me, of saying horrible things? There's no benefit in that. So when you are doing social media, remember, this is also still skillful communication. So be careful what you put. If something makes you annoyed, walk away from it. Think about it later on when you've calmed down, and if you think, I still need to reply, then when you're calm, you can reply in a good way. If you reply straight away, you're going to say things that you're going to regret, or are not compassionate and are not helpful. And also, don't think that you have to have an opinion of everything. We don't. We really don't. So this is skillful communication. The next part is the actions we do with our body. So in Buddhism, this is split into non-violent actions. It's split into actions of taking what hasn't been given, and it's also split into sexual misconduct. So let's look at the first one. So Buddha and Mahatma Gandhi ji spoke a lot about ahimsa. Ahimsa means non-violence, but it doesn't just mean about not doing violence. Actually, ahimsa means not even having the thought of violence. That is true ahimsa. So if somebody is annoying you and then you're about to punch them and you're no, I won't punch them. That's not ahimsa, because you've had that thought of violence. If somebody's annoying you and you have no wish to be violent to them, whether verbally or even, bodily, physically, then if you have no wish to do that, that's ahimsa. And that is what non-violence is all about. It's not just about not killing that mosquito that is, on your arm. It's about not wishing to even kill that, just like push it away. Remember that mosquito is not targeting you personally. Though sometimes it does feel like that when you get attacked by lots of mosquitoes, but they're not. They're doing what they do. They need blood to survive. That is what they need. That is their life. So it isn't a personal thing. So if you just brush it off, then that's ahimsa. But if you squash it, so maybe the first time you look and squash it and then push it up, and another one comes and you squash it, and then later on you don't even have to look. You feel it there, automatically your hand comes across and squashes it. So again, that's because now that's your pathway for the neurons to fire down. So when we're talking about non-violence, we're not just talking about humans, we're talking about non-violence of the whole planet. Remember, everything on this planet is here for some reason, whether we understand it, whether we like it or not. So by destroying things, by chopping down trees, by cutting down flowers, by killing animals and killing people, we are slowly destroying the fabric of this planet. And it is clear to see we're right in the middle of a pandemic now that came from animals, from abuse of animals. And a lot of the diseases we've been fighting over the last few years have all stemmed from animals. We are destroying the planet. So non-violence means not having any thought of wanting to destroy the planet and all its inhabitants and all the trees and all the flowers and all the shrubs and everything on this planet. That's what ahimsa is, and that's what we should be aiming for, not even having that thought of violence in our minds. Another aspect of this is taking what hasn't been given. So, stealing, in other words. So maybe you think that, you're at work and there's a few pens, I'll just take these pens and maybe some paper home. That's not stealing. But it isn't yours and it hasn't been given to you. So then it's stealing. Maybe you work in hospitality and there's some milk left over, or there's a loaf of bread there. I'll just take that. It hasn't been given. It wasn't yours. It is stealing. So whenever we take something that has not been given to us and doesn't belong to us, that is stealing. And you see, the more that we do that, the more then that neurons are going to go down that path, which means that you will be stealing even though you don't necessarily want anything. You may not want anything, but you're just now naturally stealing because that is what you do. You steal. So again, we have to be careful that even if it's the smallest thing, if it isn't ours, it hasn't been given to us, we shouldn't take it. If we really need it, ask for it. If they won't give it, then we're going to have to work hard and get it, or we're going to have to go without it. But we shouldn't be stealing. The next part of this skillful bodily actions is sexual misconduct, which means harming somebody with the sexual act. it doesn't mean sexual orientation. So it isn't talking about whether you're straight, whether you're gay or lesbian, or you're transgender, or you're transsexual, or you're bisexual, or you're anything else that I missed off there. It isn't talking about sexual orientation. All of those things are perfectly okay if it's consensual. So if it's a man and a woman, a man and a man, a woman and a woman, whatever the mixture, if it's consensual, then it is fine. So this sexual misconduct is not talking about your sexual orientation, but it is talking about harming people with the sexual act, such as rape, such as underage sex, such as putting people in the sex trade, or trafficking people to put them in the sex trade. All of this is wrong. And also, if you are married to somebody, I know in some cultures that it feels like this, it's still like this in some ways, that once a man marries a woman, that woman becomes his property. It is not true. Nobody is anybody's property. We've moved on from there. It should never be like that. You marry because you want to be together. You don't marry because you want to have a piece of property. So if it isn't consensual, whether you're married or whether you're not married, if it isn't consensual, then it is wrong. If it isn't consensual, whether married or not, it is rape. So sexual misconduct is talking about not harming somebody with a sexual act, making sure that it's consensual, because that means then you're doing it in a skillful way. You're doing it in a way that is built on love and built on respect. So the final part of this part of the eightfold path is livelihood. Again, this is probably something we never really give a lot of thought to. But we should think carefully before we go down a path about taking this as my livelihood. Recently I had somebody who emailed me, and they went into the field of biology, and they did all of that work, and they went to university, they got their MA, and when they went to find a job, they realized that all the jobs they were getting, meaning that they're having to kill animals and dissect them and use them on experiments, and they didn't want that. So here, I'm not saying this job is right and this job is wrong. Sometimes we have to do jobs that we don't really want to do for survival. I understand that. I understand that not everybody has a perfect opportunity to do the job they really love. I mean, if you do, then it's fantastic. But we should be looking at our livelihood. We should be checking to see, is this what I'm doing, my livelihood, my work, is it affecting somebody else? Is it causing harm, not just to somebody else, to something else? Is it causing harm to the planet? Is it causing harm to other animals? Is it causing harm to humans? We should look very, very carefully at our livelihood. I know that maybe people just think, oh, this is a good thing to do. And then when they go deeper into it, then actually they can understand they are harming something. So all I'm saying here is that think very, very carefully about what livelihood you choose. Now, sometimes it can be a balance. That, you know, some of what you do may be good and some of what you do may not be good. Like if you're a lawyer, then you represent somebody that, you know, it really has been mistreated and you get justice for them. That's great. But every time you win, somebody has to lose. And maybe the person you're fighting for hasn't been truly honest to you and they win, but the person who was honest loses. So I'm not saying don't be a lawyer, but what I'm just saying is that we need to look carefully at our livelihoods to ensure that to the best of our knowledge and the best of our ability, we should not be causing any harm to any animal, any human, or any plants or trees, anything to do with the planet, even polluting. So You know, when you're out starting to pick a livelihood, think carefully about that livelihood. Make sure as much as you can that you are choosing a skillful and wise livelihood and you're not harming anybody. So these are the three aspects I want to talk about today. So give it some thought. Think about your livelihood. Think about your bodily actions and think about your speech. Because remember, once we start having bad or unskillful and unwise actions, it's going to be firing us down the wrong path, and then we have to now make a new path. But we can. I mean, that's the good news. That if we stick to the eightfold path, even if we have gone off the path, we can find a new way back onto that path.